Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about something that touches every one of us, something that shapes our happiness, our relationships, and even our success. That something is anger. Not anger in the sense of standing up for what's right, but the kind of anger that burns inside, consumes your peace, and clouds your judgment. You see, life will always throw challenges at you. People will misunderstand you. Situations will frustrate you. Things will go wrong, and often they will go wrong in ways you never expected. But here's the truth. The power to react differently rests entirely within you. The moment you decide that you will not be controlled by anger, you take the first step toward mastery. Now, let me share a secret. Anger is often like fire. Fire is useful when harnessed. It warms your home, cooks your food, lights your path. But left unchecked, fire destroys everything in its path. Anger is the same. It can motivate you if you use it wisely, but if you allow it to rule, it will burn away your relationships, your health, your peace of mind. The art of never getting angry begins with awareness. You must recognize the triggers, the little things that push your buttons. Maybe it's a rude comment, a delayed response, or a mistake someone else made. When you become aware of these triggers, you gain the opportunity to pause, reflect, and choose a better response. That pause is your greatest weapon. Next comes perspective. Most of the time, anger arises from a misunderstanding or an expectation that wasn't met. Ask yourself, will this matter in a week, a month, a year? The truth is, 90% of the things we get angry about are fleeting, temporary, and trivial. When you see life from this higher perspective, anger loses its grip. But awareness and perspective alone are not enough. You must practice discipline. Like any skill, mastering your emotions requires consistent effort. Train yourself to respond calmly, not react impulsively. Start small practice. Patience in traffic and line at the store or during minor disagreements. Each time you resist the urge to explode, you strengthen your inner control. And finally, understand this. Anger is a choice. It is not an inevitable reaction, it is a decision. When you accept this truth, you step into freedom. You realize that nobody can make you angry without your permission. You choose peace over fury, clarity over confusion, love over resentment. And when you make that choice, you elevate every moment of your life. Imagine what life would be like if you carried this mastery within you. Meetings become opportunities instead of battlegrounds. Conversations turn into bridges instead of arguments. Even the most difficult people and situations no longer drain your energy, they become mirrors, reflecting the strength and control you've built inside. So today I challenge you. Commit to mastering the art of never getting angry. Train your mind, strengthen your perspective, and make discipline your ally. Life will still test you, but you will no longer be a prisoner of your emotions. You will rise above the noise, the frustration, and the chaos, walking with calm confidence in every room, in every situation, in every moment. Remember, true strength is not measured by how loudly you can roar, but by how peacefully you can remain standing when the world around you rages. The person who masters anger masters life itself, and one day when you look back, you'll realize that the greatest victory you ever achieved was the victory over yourself. Anger is one of the most powerful emotions we experience as human beings, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. Many people believe that anger is uncontrollable, that it is something that happens to them rather than something they have influence over. This is a misconception. Anger is not inherently bad. It is a signal, an alert from within, indicating that something matters deeply to us. The challenge is not to eliminate entirely, but to understand it, recognize it, and learn to respond wisely rather than react impulsively. When we take the time to study the nature of anger, we realize that its impact reaches far beyond the immediate moment. It affects our health, our relationships, and our ability to make clear, rational decisions. The first step in mastering anger is awareness. Without understanding what triggers it, we remain at its mercy. Triggers are not always obvious. They can be as simple as a rude remark, a delay that interrupts our schedule, or even a thought that challenges our sense of fairness. Sometimes anger arises not from the actions of others, but from unmet expectations we place upon ourselves. Recognizing these triggers is a form of education in itself, a process of self-discovery that teaches us about our vulnerabilities, our values, and our priorities. Awareness transforms anger from a chaotic force into a teacher, revealing where growth is needed and where we must strengthen our emotional resilience. Once we understand the triggers, we can examine the consequences of allowing anger to go unchecked. Anger has a way of clouding judgment. Decisions made in the heat of anger are rarely wise, and the outcomes often leave regret in their wake. It can damage relationships, as harsh words or actions spoken in anger create wounds that may take years to heal. Beyond interpersonal consequences, anger affects our physical and mental well-being. Chronic anger has been linked to high blood pressure, weakened immune response, and increased stress levels. It consumes energy that could otherwise be used for creativity, problem solving, and personal growth. By seeing anger not just as an emotion, but as a force with real consequences, we begin to appreciate why mastery over it is so crucial. Education about anger also includes understanding its underlying causes. Often what surfaces as anger is rooted in fear, frustration, or a sense of injustice. When we explore these layers, we begin to see that anger is often a mask for deeper emotions that require attention. Frustration at circumstances we cannot control, disappointment and unmet expectations, or fear of being disrespected or overlooked can all manifest as outward aggression. By identifying these underlying causes, we can address the root issues rather than simply suppressing the symptoms. This approach is empowering because it shifts us from being passive recipients of emotion to active managers of our inner state. Moreover, understanding anger teaches us about human behavior itself. Every person you meet is navigating their own struggles, challenges, and frustrations. Recognizing that others are fallible and imperfect provides perspective, allowing us to respond with empathy rather than rage. Awareness of anger is not just a personal exercise, it is also a social skill, enhancing our interactions and helping us build stronger, more meaningful connections. When we approach situations with calm observation rather than immediate reaction, we create space for understanding, resolution, and collaboration. The educational aspect of anger mastery also involves learning practical strategies for regulation. Deep breathing, pausing before responding, journaling emotions, or engaging in physical activity are all tools that help manage immediate reactions. These practices, when repeated consistently, train the mind to respond with intention rather than reflex. They are exercises in emotional intelligence, teaching patience, self-control, and resilience. The more we practice, the more natural it becomes to maintain composure, even in challenging circumstances. Finally, understanding anger in an educational sense inspires hope. When we know how anger works, when we recognize its triggers and consequences, and when we learn strategies to manage it, we realize that change is possible. Mastery over anger is not about suppressing feelings. It is about cultivating wisdom, patience, inner strength. It is about choosing to act with clarity, responding with intention, and protecting the peace of our mind and heart. This knowledge is liberating because it places the power firmly in our hands. We are no longer victims of circumstance or our own impulses. We are architects of our emotional life, capable of creating calm, measured, and constructive responses in every situation. In essence, understanding anger is the first step toward mastering it. By studying its triggers, observing its impact, exploring its root causes, and practicing intentional responses, we transform anger from a destructive force into a teacher and guide. This knowledge empowers us to navigate life with greater wisdom, to protect our relationships, and to maintain inner peace. The journey begins with awareness, and awareness is the foundation of all personal growth. Mastering anger is not just an emotional achievement, it is a profound step toward mastering life itself. Mastering anger begins with awareness, but awareness alone is not enough. It must be accompanied by the practice of pausing before we speak, before we act, and even before we fully feel the surge of emotion. This pause is more than a brief moment. It is a powerful act of self-mastery, a conscious choice to step outside the automatic reaction and to meet life with intention rather than impulse. In that pause lies freedom, because it is in the space between stimulus and response that true power is found. Most people live as if that space does not exist, reacting immediately to frustration, insult, or provocation, only to regret their actions later. Learning to pause is learning to reclaim control over your life, to decide consciously how you will respond instead of allowing the situation to dictate your behavior. The pause works because it interrupts the automatic cycle of anger. Anger is often an immediate, instinctual response, and when left unchecked, it can escalate rapidly. By taking a step back, even for a few seconds, you give your rational mind the chance to reassert itself over raw emotion. You allow perspective to enter the moment. You give yourself the opportunity to ask the simple yet transformative question, how do I want to respond? This moment of reflection changes everything. What once would have been a reaction born of irritation can become a response born of wisdom. And the beauty of this practice is that it can be applied to every situation. From small annoyances to major conflicts, gradually rewiring your default reactions and strengthening your emotional resilience. Awareness and pause also teach us to observe our emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Often we believe we are our emotions, that anger defines us and that we must act on it immediately. But in reality, emotions are signals, they are data about our inner state and our environment. When we cultivate awareness, we can notice the surge of anger, feel it without judgment, and understand it as a signal rather than a command. By observing our emotions, we create a distance between ourselves and the intensity of the feeling. This distance is crucial because it allows clarity to emerge. In that clarity, we discover choices, strategies, and solutions that were invisible in the heat of the moment. Emotional awareness transforms anger from a prison into a doorway, from a liability into an opportunity for growth. Part of the power of pausing lies in its ability to prevent the compounding of conflict. Many arguments escalate not because of the initial problem, but because of immediate, unfiltered reactions. A harsh word, a defensive gesture, or a rushed reply can turn a small misunderstanding into a major confrontation. When we practice the mindful pause, we interrupt this chain reaction. We give ourselves the chance to respond thoughtfully, to consider the other person's perspective, and to communicate in a way that promotes understanding rather than division. Over time, this practice not only reduces conflict, but also strengthens relationships. People notice when you respond calmly and deliberately, and they are more likely to respect and trust you as a result. Another key aspect of the pause is its connection to self-discipline. Mastery over anger is ultimately a discipline, a skill developed through consistent practice. Just as an athlete trains their body to perform at its best under pressure, so too must we train our minds to respond with composure under emotional stress. This training begins with small, everyday exercises. Resisting the urge to interrupt someone, refraining from snapping at a minor inconvenience, or taking a few deep breaths before reacting to criticism. These small acts of discipline accumulate over time, creating a strong foundation for emotional control in the more challenging situations of life. What may seem minor in the moment becomes monumental in the long run, because each pause strengthens the neural pathways associated with calm, thoughtful responses. The pause also nurtures empathy and understanding. When we step back from anger, we are better able to consider the intentions, struggles, and perspectives of others. We recognize that people act from their own experiences, fears, and limitations, just as we do. This awareness fosters compassion, reduces judgment, and allows us to respond in ways that build bridges rather than walls. Empathy does not mean excusing harmful behavior, but it does mean responding in a way that maintains integrity, dignity, and control over our own actions. By pausing, we elevate ourselves above mere reaction and participate in the higher art of deliberate, thoughtful response. Finally, mastering the pause teaches us the profound truth that we are not slaves to our emotions. Life will always present situations that provoke anger, frustration, or irritation. But how we respond to those situations is entirely our choice. Every pause is a moment of empowerment, a chance to demonstrate inner strength, clarity, and wisdom. The more we practice, the more natural it becomes to maintain composure even in the most testing circumstances. Gradually, we transform from individuals who are tossed about by circumstance into individuals who navigate life with calm, measured confidence. In essence, awareness combined with the mindful pause is the gateway to emotional mastery. It allows us to observe anger without being controlled by it, to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively, and to cultivate discipline, empathy, and self-control. In this practice, we discover the freedom to choose our reactions, the freedom to protect our peace, and the freedom to rise above the noise of the world with confidence and clarity. It is in these moments, in the quiet space between stimulus and response, that true strength is born, and the art of never getting angry begins to take root. Much of the anger we experience in life stems from the way we perceive events, situations, and the actions of others. It is not always the circumstances themselves that provoke our frustration, but the meaning we assign to them. Our expectations, assumptions, and interpretations often magnify problems, creating emotional storms where none need exist. Understanding this is the essence of perspective, the ability to step back, look at the bigger picture, and view challenges from a wider lens. Perspective is not just a mental exercise, it is a transformative skill, allows us to turn potential conflict into opportunity and irritation into understanding. When we allow ourselves to become trapped in narrow thinking, every inconvenience feels monumental, every slight feels personal, and every frustration feels like an attack. Perspective frees us from this narrow view. It encourages us to ask questions like, will this matter tomorrow, next week, or next year? And what can I learn from this situation? By shifting our focus from immediate emotional reaction to long-term understanding, we reduce the power that anger holds over us. We begin to see that life is far larger than a single insult, mistake, or setback. Each moment of perceived injustice or irritation is, in reality, a fleeting fragment of a much larger picture. Recognizing this allows us to respond with calm and clarity rather than with impulsive emotion. Perspective also teaches the value of reframing. Reframing is the process of consciously altering the way we interpret an event. Behavior. When someone behaves rudely, instead of reacting with anger, we might reframe it as a reflection of their own struggles, stress, or lack of understanding. When plans are disrupted, instead of becoming frustrated, we might view it as an opportunity to develop patience, creativity, or resilience. Reframing does not ignore reality, it simply transforms how we respond to it. By changing our interpretation, we change our experience. The challenge that once provoked anger now becomes a lesson, an opportunity, or a stepping stone toward personal growth. Perspective empowers us to see the hidden gifts in life's difficulties. Developing perspective requires practice and conscious effort. It begins with observation learning to notice when our judgments or expectations are intensifying anger. Awareness alone is insufficient if we continue to interpret every situation through a lens of personal offense or entitlement. Perspective demands that we pause and ask ourselves deeper questions. Am I reacting to the reality, or am I reacting to my expectations? Am I giving this situation more significance than it deserves? These questions create space for clarity, allowing us to respond in a measured and thoughtful way, rather than being swept away by immediate emotion. Each time we exercise perspective, we strengthen our capacity to remain composed in future challenges. Perspective also broadens our understanding of human behavior. We often encounter people whose actions irritate us, frustrate us, or even harm us. From the outside, their behavior may seem intentional or malicious, but when we step back and apply perspective, we recognize that everyone acts from their own experiences, limitations, and emotions. By understanding that people are guided by their own challenges, we can respond with empathy rather than anger. Perspective helps us see the shared humanity in every interaction. It reminds us that mistakes, miscommunications, and misunderstandings are part of life, and that responding with composure and understanding is far more productive than reacting with hostility. Furthermore, perspective is closely linked to emotional resilience. Life will always present obstacles, disappointments, and provocations. Perspective allows us to view these not as threats to our happiness, but as opportunities to grow stronger, wiser, and more patient. It gives us the mental flexibility to navigate adversity without being consumed by it. Those who cultivate perspective are less likely to dwell on setbacks or harbor grudges, and more likely to maintain a sense of inner peace even in challenging circumstances. They recognize that while they cannot control every external event, they can control how they interpret and respond to it. The educational and inspirational value of perspective lies in its ability to transform our relationship with life. By consistently choosing to see beyond immediate irritation, by reframing challenges, and by understanding the broader context of events and human behavior, we gain mastery over one of the most destructive forces in life, anger. Perspective does not eliminate difficulties, but it allows us to approach them with calm, clarity, and creativity. It teaches us that emotional freedom is achieved not by controlling the world around us, but by controlling the way we perceive it. The calmer, wiser, and more patient we become, the more opportunities we have to lead a life marked by balance, joy, fulfillment. In essence, perspective is the lens through which we view the world, and mastering it is central to mastering anger. By stepping back, reframing challenges, and recognizing the broader context, we prevent anger from dictating our reactions and shaping our lives. Perspective allows us to transform difficulties into lessons, frustrations into growth, and conflict into understanding. Those who cultivate this skill walk through life with greater serenity, influence, and wisdom, turning potential moments of anger into opportunities for personal excellence and lasting inner peace. Anger is not an uncontrollable force of nature, it is a choice, a decision we make in response to the events and people around us. Understanding this is the cornerstone of true emotional mastery. Many people live as though they are at the mercy of their moods. believing that anger simply happens to them. But mastery is the realization that every reaction, every impulse, and every moment of frustration is an opportunity to choose differently. Discipline, practice, and conscious choice form the foundation of this mastery, and by embracing them, we can transform our relationship with anger and with life itself. Discipline begins with small, intentional actions. It is the repeated practice of responding thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. In everyday life, these moments are abundant when someone cuts you off in traffic, when a colleague makes an insensitive remark, when a plan falls apart, or when a loved one disappoints you. Each of these situations presents a choice: to allow anger to rise unchecked or to respond with calm, patience, and perspective. By consistently choosing the latter, we train ourselves to maintain composure even in more significant challenges. Discipline is not an occasional effort, it is a habit, a pattern of repeated decisions that shape character over time. Just as physical strength is built through regular exercise, emotional strength built through daily practice in restraint, patience, and self-control. Practice amplifies discipline, and it is the bridge between understanding and mastery. It is one thing to know that anger can be controlled, and quite another to act on that knowledge consistently. Practice is about creating real-life exercises in patience and composure. It might be as simple as pausing before replying to a critical email, taking a few deep breaths when interrupted, or choosing not to argue over a minor disagreement. Each act of restraint strengthens the mind's ability to act deliberately rather than react impulsively. Over time, this repeated practice rewires our responses, making calmness and wisdom the default rather than anger and frustration. Practice is the way we turn theoretical understanding into lived experience, transforming knowledge into a powerful habit. Choice is the heart of mastery. Every time we encounter frustration, disappointment, or provocation, we face a moment of decision. Will we react with anger, or will we choose composure? Will we allow the situation to steal our peace, or will we respond with clarity and calm? Recognizing that we always have this choice is liberating. It shifts power from external circumstances back into our hands. The individual who understands this does not become passive or indifferent, rather, they become active participants in their own emotional life. They understand that control over anger is not about suppressing emotions, but about channeling them constructively, making decisions that preserve their integrity, relationships, and peace of mind. The practice of choice also extends to our long-term habits. Mastery of anger is not only about how we respond in individual moments, it is about the life we construct through countless small decisions. Each instance of restraint builds a foundation of trust, respect, and personal credibility. Others notice the calm and measured way we handle challenges, and this inspires confidence and admiration. Moreover, each choice we make reinforces our inner strength, creating a self-reinforcing cycle. The more we practice deliberate responses, the stronger our discipline becomes, and the easier it becomes to make wise choices in the future. An important aspect of choice is understanding that anger often comes from a sense of control being challenged. When things do not go as we expect, when people act differently from how we imagine, or when life throws unexpected obstacles, the natural reaction is frustration. However, mastery involves recognizing that we cannot control the actions of others or the events that unfold around us, but we can always control how we respond. Choosing composure over anger is not a denial of reality, it is an affirmation of personal power. It is the recognition that our happiness, peace, and effectiveness are determined not by external conditions, but by the choices we make internally. The educational and inspirational value of discipline, practice, and choice is profound. These principles teach us that emotional mastery is attainable by anyone willing to put in the effort. It is not dependent on personality, temperament, or circumstance. It is a skill like any other that can be developed through intention, repetition, and reflection. Each act of restraint, each moment of thoughtful response is a step toward becoming the person we aspire to be, someone calm in the storm, clear in the chaos, and steadfast in the face of provocation. Ultimately, mastering anger is about reclaiming control over your life. It is about realizing that inner peace is not granted by circumstances, but earned through conscious, disciplined action. By practicing restraint, choosing our responses deliberately, and building the habit of composure, we transform anger from a destructive force into a teacher, a signal, and a guide. This mastery frees us to live with clarity, effectiveness, and emotional resilience. It strengthens our relationships, enhances our decision-making, and nurtures a life of dignity, integrity, and fulfillment. Those who embrace discipline, practice, and choice do not merely survive the challenges of life, they rise above them, demonstrating that the greatest victory is not in controlling the world, but in mastering oneself. When we step back and reflect on the journey of mastering anger, we begin to see that it is not simply about controlling a fleeting emotion. It is about cultivating a life, clarity, calm, and purpose. Awareness teaches us to recognize the triggers that ignite frustration and irritation. The mindful pause gives us the space to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. Perspective allows us to see beyond immediate provocation, to understand the broader context, and to reframe challenges as opportunities for growth. And finally, discipline, practice, and conscious choice empower us to transform anger from a destructive force into a source of strength, resilience, and wisdom. Life will continue to present challenges, setbacks, and provocations. People will act in ways that frustrate us, plans will go awry, and circumstances will test our patience. But by embracing the principles of awareness, pause, perspective, and disciplined choice, we reclaim our power. We rise above the noise of life, refusing to allow external events or the actions of others to dictate our inner peace. We learn that the greatest freedom is found not in changing the world around us, but in mastering ourselves. Imagine what it would be like to walk through life without being enslaved by anger, to meet difficulties with calm confidence, to approach every situation with clarity and wisdom, and to cultivate relationships rooted in understanding rather than conflict. This is the art of never getting angry. It is not a denial of emotion, but the triumph of conscious living. It is the victory of reason over reaction, of strength over impulse, and of peace over chaos. We commit to this path, we discover that mastery over anger is mastery over life itself. Each moment of restraint, each thoughtful response, each choice to see beyond irritation strengthens not only our character, but our ability to live fully, intentionally, and joyfully. True power is not measured by how loudly we can express our frustration, but by how calmly, wisely, and purposefully we navigate the storms that life inevitably brings. The art of never getting angry is not a destination, it practice, a journey, and a lifelong commitment. And as we embrace it, we find that the rewards are immeasurable. Peace of mind, stronger relationships, clarity in decision-making, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing we are the masters of our own emotions. In the end, the greatest victory we can achieve is not in conquering others, but in conquering ourselves, and in doing so, we unlock the truest, most enduring form of freedom.